This is our sickness, that we're trapped in this circle. And this is where Allah is telling us to get to. Be here, and none of it will matter. And then you can struggle, and your struggle will be meaningful. Because right now, you're down here, you're just struggling out of anger, out of love of vengeance, right? When Salahuddin Ayyubi, this is where he was working from. Salahuddin Ayyubi was working from the center. He didn't spend his youth throwing stones at crusaders. He didn't spend his youth throwing stones at crusaders. Who can tell me what he did as a young man? Huh? He was a student, and one of the books he studied was the Ihya. He was a fruit of the madrasa of Imam Abu Hamid. He was a Shafi'i scholar. He memorized the Quran. That's what he was doing in his youth. Even though the Crusaders were occupying Palestine, he knew we don't have any power to do it. We can't get rid of these people now, so what should I use my time for? To learn the things that will help me not just free Al-Quds, but free the people who are oppressing the people in Al-Quds from their oppression. Unsuru akhakum zaliman aw mazluma. Give help to your brother, even your Jewish brother, your Christian brother. Help them stop oppressing. That's how the Prophet said, we know how to help victims. How do you help the oppressor? He said, by stopping him from his oppression. At least remind him. At least tell him, you're oppressing. You shouldn't do this, right? Because they kill the people that remind them. Allah says that in the Quran, right? Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, right? All Malcolm was doing, the tongue was all he had. He didn't have any army. And he started from hatred. That's where he was, and that's why if you listen to his early talks, they're just filled with hate. But listen to his last talk. Nobody wants to hear Malcolm after Mecca. They all want that harsh Malcolm, yeah. They don't want to hear the Malcolm that suddenly realizes people are human beings. White people are human. A lot of them would almost convince you otherwise. I understand that. But they're human beings, right? Turkish people are white. A lot of them. They don't behave like that sickness, right? Which some attribute to a lack of melatonin. You need more sun. The sun makes you happy, doesn't it? When the sun comes up. You live in Europe, there's never any sun, you're miserable. You get a bad attitude. But that's Malcolm. Malcolm got there. That's why in the end of his life, that's where he was. What's Martin Luther King right before he dies? I've been to the mountain. Everybody wants longevity. I've been to the mountaintop. He was moving. That's where but he started. He understood this. Trust me, he knew this model very well. You know, one thing Martin Luther King said was, if I wasn't against violence on moral terms, for moral reasons. I'd still be against it for pragmatic reasons. That's what Muslims haven't learned that. I'm against modern violence on moral grounds. I really am. I am against modern warfare. I don't believe in modern warfare. I don't believe Muslims should be engaged in modern warfare. I really don't. I'd rather be killed than kill people with nuclear weapons. I'd rather die than drop a bomb. I really would. I'd rather die than blow up children. I'd much rather be killed than kill some innocent person. And the Prophet said towards the end of time, he said, be the best of the two sons of Adam, right? Kun, khayra ibn Adam, be like the best of what? It's Habil, right? Not Qabil. It's Abel, not Cain. You know, in the tafsir of Imam al-Baghawi, what he says that Ibn Abbas said Cain was actually weaker than Abel. Abel could have defeated him, but he said their sharia was that they weren't even allowed self-defense. And that means, if that is true, that means that the foundation of our tradition is nonviolence. And I would argue that the Prophet would exhaust every nonviolent means before he would go to violent means. He would exhaust every nonviolent means. And that's why at Hudaybiyah, he had every right to fight those people, but he didn't. It was a nonviolent solution to a problem. The Muslims didn't like it. Why? Because Al-Yasir was being tortured. They were in chains. They're calling on them, help us. The Prophet said, Sabran ya Al-Yasir, inna maw'idukum al-Jannah. There's a proof that the Prophet is seeing a Muslim tortured, and he's not doing anything about it. Outwardly, he saw a Muslim being tortured, and he didn't do anything about it outwardly. Because he was a profound strategic thinker. Completely different approach to the problems of the world. That's, what time is it? 9:35? 9:45. I'll give you one more example of the Wheel of Fortune, but you'll see it many times in the Quran. It's a very useful model, and I believe it is a Quranic model. And Allah is using that example of the mushrikeen. So they're the ones that are in this circle. The Muslims are supposed to be in the center. Right? الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُمْ بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. Those who believe and their hearts have stillness, طُمَأْنِينَ, from the dhikr of Allah. Isn't it by the dhikr of Allah the hearts are still? Why are they still? Because there's no movement in the hub. In the hub. There's no movement here. These people are not still. They're in complete confusion because it's just, this is their life. Right? This is their life. They're in that samsara of just this constantly turning wheel. And that's why Muslims are confused. They don't understand. Why aren't we on top? If we're the truth, why aren't we on top? Because that's not where the truth resides. It resides here. It doesn't reside here. This is where the truth resides. It's not to be on the top, it's to be in the center. And we've lost our center. This is called kunya bilim markazi. Right? Kunya's scientific center. Right? The center. There's a man, he's called Markazi Effendi. Does any Turkish people know him? Markazi Effendi? Has anybody heard of it? You heard of him? Who is he? What's that? He was a famous scholar, yeah. But he was famous. Why is he called Markazi? Do you know why? He was called Markazi because this is where he resided. And the reason he's called Markazi is because the Sheikh was looking for a Khalifa. He was about to die. So he asked them, what would you change about Allah's creation? What would you change? And the next day the students came, so he said, what would you change? He said, I'd get rid of alcohol. He said, what would you change? He said, I'd get rid of dhulm. He said, what would you change? He said, I'd get rid of sickness. He said, what would you change? He said, I'd get rid of poverty. All the students said that. And then he said to Markazi Effendi, what would you change? He said, nothing. Who am I to make the world different from the way Allah made it? It doesn't mean you don't fight against poverty. It doesn't mean you don't fight against oppression. It doesn't mean you don't fight against sickness. It means you understand their hikmah. They're here for a reason. That's the difference. Bitter medicine, people don't like it. It's a drag, huh? It's like, you have to accept this situation. It's unacceptable.